8908 for a chance to win a prize. What that prize is will be a surprise. Is everyone, are you getting responses? Yes. Okay. So the responses should trickle in. So this is just a quick kind of live demo just right off the bat as to quick ways to kind of collect information. One of the, okay, so Raycraft. All right, so Kate, you are winner number 1. And what that prize is, I will disclose later in the presentation, so just a minute. And pick a number from 1 to 10. Yes. Yeah. 7. So number 7 we have here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is MJ. All right, congratulations. So the 2 of you are winners, and I will share with you what that prize is later on in the presentation. All right, so to kick things off, my name is Jason, and this is me when I was entering high school. So I figured I'd be talking about a bit of digital youth engagement, and I feel, I'd share a little bit about myself. I currently head up digital strategy at Pathways to Education Canada, so pretty much anything that's kind of web-facing, I oversee, as well as examining how we can use technology to help across many different functions, including marketing, outreach, etc. A little bit about Pathways is that we are a national organization focused on helping youth living in low-income communities to graduate from high school and reach their full potential. So we are currently in 20 communities across Canada, as far west as Vancouver, as far east as Halifax. So I have worked for Pathways for just under 10 years, and I've served in capacities from a frontline youth worker to working in marketing departments, now working in digital, and now heading up digital for the national organization. And much of what I'll be referring to this evening will be referring to our alumni program. So we do have a high school student program, but the alumni program, which students join after they graduate from our program, is a portfolio that I used to oversee. And currently we have 5,000 alumni, and we expect to have 10,000 by 2020. And the age range is between 17 and 30 for this particular group, although I'll be speaking to some of our implementations across both the high school and the alumni group. So to provide some context, we have just a short, kind of 15 minutes to get all the information out there. But to set some context, we currently text messages standard on phone plans, that's a given. Some youth have data plans, but not all. Facebook Messenger and Instagram seem to be preferred modes of communication among our youth. Streaming video, YouTube and Netflix are a pretty big deal, and that we see our youth trying to figure out ways to download for offline viewing, those kinds of things. And Wi-Fi availability is critical in that many of our youth kind of go from Wi-Fi hotspot to Wi-Fi hotspot, and anywhere where there's Wi-Fi, many of our youth kind of gravitate towards, and it's important to have available. Now, we also like to take a data-driven approach, so I'm going to share some results from a survey that we took earlier this year from our alumni who have graduated from our program. And the survey says, we received 333 responses, and here's a split of the responses that we got. The majority of the responses were on smartphones, although a good portion of them, the responses were on desktops and laptops as well. And the types of questions that we posed to the students were, what do you use regularly? And topping the list, which came as a bit of surprise for us, was email, followed by texting and Instagram were the top 3. But then we posed a different question, and we asked, what would you actually respond to try and get a better sense of what might be a good way to engage? And then the top 3 changed, email, Facebook, and text message. So then we put the 2 side by side just to see some of the differences here. Email stays fairly consistent across the top. However, texting is still within the top 3, But some of the others that drop significantly, you see things like Instagram that go from 65% of usage, and it drops down to 14% of response, and also Snapchat 63% used, 10% drop. So that was an indication to us that it's all well and good that students, youth are using some of these platforms, but in terms of actually wanting to engage us on some of these platforms, they don't want to hang out with us on Instagram or Snapchat, and we're very sensitive to that. And so they've indicated we want to engage you on email, we want to respond to you on Facebook and Facebook Messenger, because those are platforms that have really emerged for them. That's their expectation. I guess it's they get enough of that kind of messaging there. Their parents are on Facebook, they might as well talk to you on there on Facebook as well. But also text messaging as a channel that they self-identified that they want to be reached out to. So that also affects some of our decision making in these channels. I thought I'd also share cell phone providers. So we do work with youth who are living in low-income communities, and the top cell phone provider is Freedom. Now, when I worked in Kitchener as a frontline youth worker there, when Freedom, or formerly Win Mobile, came out, that had a significant impact on our youth in that suddenly many of our youth could afford cell phone plans, and that had impacts on other parts, such as being able to actually receive phone calls relating to job interviews. Now we could text the youth because they had cell phone plans. So, the availability of affordable cell phone packages is really important. So here you see Freedom, Chatter, Fido as the top three there. Okay, and we asked them for advice. What advice would you give us if we want to do our jobs better? And less words. Literally, there could not be less words to express that. 2 words, less words. Keep it precise and simple, keep messages short and to the point. So the overall kind of feedback that we got, this is a representative sample, was keep it short and to the point, and don't try to be cool. Or at least don't try to seem like you're trying too hard to be cool. And just saying, like, we know you're trying, but acknowledge that no matter how hard you try sometimes, it's just not going to land. And, it was a little bit reassuring to get, that kind of feedback as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of the practices that we do internally as well. So opening a little bit of our playbook. First off, we have a youth advisory committee. So this isn't directly kind of digital related, but it helps guide our digital kind of projects and behavior in that we have a youth advisory committee comprised of our alumni that they provide advice on what we should pursue and sometimes what we shouldn't pursue. So if we have something that's ready to roll out, we'll actually run it by our youth advisory committee to say, hey, what's your initial kind of thoughts on this? Give us your initial feedback, and then we can kind of tweak it from there. So thoughts around it was from this committee that indicated that maybe having local chat groups for students that have enrolled at U of T. What if we create a WhatsApp group there, and that can form a pilot there, and other things around like, hey, what if we start engaging with you on Snapchat in addition to the survey data? And the resounding response there was like, please don't. So we followed their advice. We have a Facebook private group, which has been very helpful for engaging with the youth quickly. We have just about almost, I would say, 800 members that are part of the Facebook group. So when we do need to message out to them, we can get quick responses. So usually notifications around opportunities, ticket giveaways, employment opportunities, employment fairs, things like that. So we have a fairly good involvement there. Facebook pages. Now this is something that is used more at the program level. So this is an example of one of our programs in BC where the feedback we've gotten is that this is actually catered more to the parents. So if we want to keep parents informed, this is what they actually check more of, where we let them know if there's been any change to tutoring dates or times, or what the schedule may be for certain things. Facebook pages have worked well for engaging with parents of our youth. We've also been seeing an increase in Facebook messages to our organization in general. So like in the past, people would typically phone us or email us, but one channel that we've seen is that people will just go to our Facebook page and start messaging us directly from there as well to get responses. So we've had to make sure that we've staffed that accordingly as part of our the individuals who are looking after all incoming inquiries. And social media advertisements. So this is something that I want to speak to in terms of, it's not just about having all the students on our mailing list or posting on social media, but it's also making sure that we're getting out in front of them for things that for some of the programs that we're running, because we want to have as much turnout as possible. So we do run Facebook ads as well to encourage our alumni to sign up for them for these events and to turn out. So this has been an effective tool in terms of getting higher turnout out to some of our events as well. So some of the tools that we use internally. Slack has been a helpful resource for some of the one-off projects. So we've had students that are doing capstone projects for their studies. So this is a group from Ryerson, and you can see some of the screenshots here that able to provision them with a quick Slack access. And this is something that they've actually asked for as well. Like if you do have Slack, you can just insert us there as a quick way to communicate with you. HelloSign has actually been a tool that's been quite useful for us in that prior to HelloSign, we would arrive at events with a ton of papers for release forms, for photo consents and everything. But since moving to HelloSign, that we can have a phone ready, or we can actually send out links in advance to students so then they can sign with their finger to make sure that we have the documentation that's needed in order to move forward for some of the events. So this has been a really helpful tool and cut down on paper. If anyone's tried to give paper to youth before as well, you know that they can end up in the bottom of a backpack and you may never see it ever again. So we're trying to push towards digital in this regard. Live broadcasts. So this is something that we started doing with our ticket giveaways in that we do random draws, but in order to really show that it is truly random, we'll actually cut out pieces of paper, put them in a cup, and do a live video feed of us pulling the paper out of the cup to announce who the winners are. And this is another way that we engage with our youth online. This is something that I've had to really get feedback on from the youth, because personally, I am very biased towards the written word and seeing posts in that way, but the feedback we've got for our youth is that they prefer video posts and video content, which is something that we give them that based on that feedback. Instagram. So this is an Instagram account actually from one of our program locations, and this is one of the ways, we have a national Instagram account, but this is a local Instagram account that they simply post updates and news from the program location. Now, what's interesting is that they've observed that they don't actually get a lot of engagement or likes. And when I spoke to the local program staff about why that was, there's a disconnect in that students aren't necessarily going to like every post, but they will provide feedback when they show up to programming that they have seen the posts. And they reassure the staff. It's like, oh, don't worry, I saw the post and I got the news, but I didn't like it because, the threshold is I see, this really tasty, delicious dish that a friend posted or some fashion piece, and it's the mental space of liking, something that tells you that, tutoring is happening tomorrow. It doesn't quite meet that threshold for tutoring. So although, there are all these other channels, email is one of the things that we still spend a good Toronto, and here are all the locations of your stores. Now, another thing that we use Google Fusion tables for is clustering or trying to identify where students are living for transportation. So when we're organizing an event and we need to set up transportation for them to go back home, and we're ordering cabs for them beforehand, we will actually plot it all out on a map and try to figure out where clusters of students are, so that we can more efficiently route students back home, so that we don't have to send an individual car for each student. So that's one of the use cases as well. Another use case for Google Fusion tables is that when I worked in Kitchener, we actually laid out the postal codes of students on the map, and we were trying to identify, are there any transportation issues for students that are maybe on the very periphery of our catchment areas, and that helped identify, with some of our youth workers as well, that some of the students are living with maybe it takes them an hour by transit. Is there something that we can do for them to better support them in that they have to take quite a a long trip in order to get to some of our program areas. Resource Base. So Resource Base is something that we've launched in the past year for digital asset management. It's an open source digital asset management software. This one we have installed on Azure. So we took advantage of Microsoft's free Azure credit. And this has been really useful in terms of, prior to this, when we had digital assets, they would go into a shared folder, and you know what it's like, kind of trying to navigate a shared folder of photos. Like, you put in the photos and you might never actually, use them. But this provides a very good kind of visual interface to see, kind of the kind of stuff that's in the album. But what's been really useful is that this has a connection over to Google Vision as API. And so we're able to tag all the photos automatically as they're coming in. So take, for example, if we're putting together a proposal on youth and technology, that we're able to search like computer, and it'll pull up all the photos of youth and with computers as well, because they've been auto-tagged. And so we have thousands of photos, and we're able to just run it through the system, and it's actually been quite effective for filtering photos over time. Engagement scoring. So engagement scoring is something that we've been exploring in the last couple of years for youth in our alumni program. And this is just a sample of the kinds of things. There are more variables to it, but things like event participations or email click-throughs and online engagement. And we'll actually create formulas to try and identify who are alumni who are fairly engaged with our program, that we can really ask if they would like to be more involved, but also trying to identify alumni who may have had indications that they are quite interested in our programs and maybe just need a little bit more of a nudge. So this is just a sample kind of scoring here, where we put a lot of emphasis on students that have attended an event, and then if they've clicked through, it's a much lower kind of score. But if someone's clicking on every single email, then maybe that's something that we can kind of reach out to them and ask, hey, is there something more that we can do to help you, convert to participate in the event? And if they participate online as well, that's something that we are that we also count as well. So over time, this has helped us identify youth who are quite engaged, and then we invite them to also be part of our alumni committee, depending on their rate of and over time, it's also helped us predict attendance. So we record information on who's RSVP, but also who shows up for an event. So again, over time, based on someone's engagement score or their attendance record, we can pretty accurately measure what the attrition rate for no-shows at an event may be. So we can actually overbook some of our events with fairly good accuracy. Texting and phone systems. So actually, the prize for the earlier texting was membership to N10. So I sit on the board of N10, which is an organization that helps nonprofits leverage technology to meet their missions. So I'll be reaching out to you, Kate and Andrew, for your memberships. And if you'd like to speak more about it afterwards, let me know. But yeah, n10.org, you can check it out. It's chock full of resources as well. So on the texting side, we do mass texting with our students. So if they do sign up for an event, you'll get a text about 3 days before, probably the day before, and then the day of. And those little nudges really help improve the attendance rate for many of our events as well. And we do that through Twilio, and we're using Click Dimensions, which is connected to Microsoft Dynamics for our alumni database. However, it's also useful for volunteer recruitment. So what you experienced at the beginning, there have been times when I was working at Kitchener when I would simply put my phone number on a board and just hold up my phone and be like, I am not leaving here until my phone starts buzzing. And then my phone starts buzzing, and we were able to recruit many more volunteers that way versus a traditional sign-up sheet. So it wasn't uncommon to have an auditorium full of 200 people talk about how great our program is, volunteering with you, circulate a sign-up sheet, and get 5 sign-ups. Versus I hold up my phone, wait till it starts buzzing, and you get 40 or 50 signups. So it's about meeting people where they are. And that's something that's really important to Pathways, in that our community programming is meeting youth in the communities in which they live. And that's why we interpreted we also are meeting them online where they are. So that's why we were also one of the early organizations onto Facebook using it in a programmatic manner, in 2009, when most other school boards were banning Facebook at the time, but we made the decision to go in the other direction and be like, hey, youth are going to be on this platform. Let's engage with them here. We'll figure out the policies and procedures as well, but it's important to also meet youth where they are, whether it be Facebook, whether it be texting, whatever channels they happen to be using. So what you experienced when you texted earlier was actually made using Twilio Studio. So Twilio Studio is actually pretty fun in that it's pretty much a drag and drop interface that you can route the triggers and what you want the response to be. So typically if you're using Twilio, you have to code it up to use their API, but Twilio Studio makes it a little bit easier. If you don't want to delve into the code, you can actually just drag and drop it instead and get some good basic flows for texting or calls. Twilio.org, if you're interested in exploring this more, we're doing impact interviews. So if we're doing interviews with students or staff, we actually coded up this internal tool. If you call it, it'll say, hello, Pathways, this is your magical recording robot. Please dial the number. And then you dial the number, and then after both parties hang up, we'll just grab the MP3. So it just makes it a lot easier rather than having to put on speakerphone and record on your phone or whatever other kind of mishmash of things that you would otherwise have to do in order to get a recording of something. And then one thing we've been experimenting with is running through Temi. So Temi is automated transcription at 10 cents a minute, and it's quite accurate, and it gets the job done for us at a fraction of the cost of what traditional transcription would be. Traditional transcription would actually be 10 times the cost at $1 a minute, and the automation drops it down by a factor of 10. So I'm just going to run for you a quick case study of bringing it all together. We had a Black Panther screening event last year, and this was based on feedback from our youth advisory committee. They were looking for an event that they could bring other youth together in a more kind of social atmosphere. So we decided to put together a screening event. We used Canva.com to put together the collateral and to make kind of social media banners that they could use. And then we made sure that all the data collection was mobile first, in that most of the youth are going to be RSVPing via their phones, so that was a priority. And then sending email reminders in conjunction with text reminders as well is critical in terms of making sure that students are turning up for these events, and we have found that to be very effective there. So that's an example of the kind of text that would be sent out, not for this event, but for our Grand Ball event, which is our annual gala. Two-way text communication is also very important. It's not only just sending it out, but the ability to hear back from youth, because life happens and sometimes people aren't able to make it. So being able to hear back from youth, the day of, if they're not able to make it, they actually would text us, and then we would move to the next person on the wait list. So we were able to make sure all the spots were filled that way. And having an Instagram takeover, handing over our account to one of our youth who had demonstrated that they are quite familiar with Instagram and how to use it was helpful as well. And here's a shot of the event at the theater again in Dundas. And then doing a post-event survey, so really taking that feedback seriously and constantly then updating the engagement score that I spoke about earlier is kind of the last step. And something that's actually quite not digital is physical thank you notes. So this is something that we really try to put that human touch on, that it's actually quite novel for a lot of our youth to receive stuff in the mail. And they're actually reaching that age where most of the stuff they get in the mail is starting to be bills. So when we are able to send them physical thank you notes, they'll actually provide feedback like, wow, that's different. Like, I don't think I get a lot of physical mail in general. And it's really a way for us to differentiate. So I'm really grateful that Pathways has afforded the room to experiment over the years. And really, when we're exploring Facebook, that was back in 2009 at a time when most other organizations were going in the opposite direction. Even things like Bitcoin. We first heard about Bitcoin in 2012 when a student actually sat down with one of us and was like, hey, have you heard about it? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? And we were the first charity in Canada to issue tax receipts for Bitcoin donations in 2013. And this was at a time when I'd spent a couple hours on the phone with CRA trying to explain to them first what Bitcoin was. And then, trying to go through the process of trying to do these kind of things. But these are all things that really came through feedback with our youth. And really, when we don't know, we ask reviews because they've been a great source of information and feedback for a lot of things that we do. And with that's my quick kind of 15 minutes, and I'll put it up there for questions.